Hello and welcome back to ALECtv. I'm your host, Matt Fisher, coming to you here from Salt Lake City for our annual meeting. And joining me now is John Ramsey. John Ramsey is the founder of the Bill of Financial Responsibilities Project, helping to bring fiscal responsibility to America. John, thank you for joining us today. How are you doing?
Thank you, Matt. It's good to be with you.
It's great to have you on. So tell us, what brings you here to ALEC today for our annual meeting?
Well, I want to help communicate our purpose and what we're doing with the Bill of Financial Responsibilities. That's a mouthful, I know, but it is a package of 5 brief financial management amendments to the U.S. Constitution. When you stop and think, when the Constitution was ratified, the budget of the federal government was $4 million a year.
Wow.
Today, it's approaching $4 trillion. And we are using virtually the same rule book with almost no rules about what Congress can and can't do with our money. And so they've done some pretty terrible things with our money over the years. And the Bill of Financial Responsibilities, which we abbreviate to BOFR, exists to try to bring that under control. A number of organizations have, with good intentions, suggested that we should have an Article 5 Convention of the States, which is a means by which states can directly offer and adopt amendments to the U.S. Constitution and then send them back to the states for ratification. And the Congress does not get involved when you use that methodology. And so these groups have suggested that states ought to convene and adopt a balanced budget amendment to the U.S. Constitution. And that sounds very tempting. But the fact of the matter is there's a lot more wrong with federal financial management than just their deficit spending. That's a doozy for sure,
right.
But it's not the only one. For example, if you balance revenues to expenditures, that's the essence of what the balanced budget amendment seeks to do. It ignores all that's going on the revenue side, and we want to look at that as well. We want to look at both sides in order to achieve balance. The revenue side is a serious mess because we operate under an internal revenue code that is now 75,000 pages long, and not many people know what's in it. And it's full of exceptions, exemptions, special favors, circumstances that different groups and different people have employed over the years. We think a simpler, more comprehensive tax code is necessary. 44% of our people pay no taxes whatsoever. Think about that. It is not a system that really includes our people. Doesn't mean that any individual's taxes need to be raised. In fact, I don't think they do. But the truth is that it ought to be more comprehensive, and that when a person votes, a person should not vote having no skin in the game because they don't have to pay any taxes. So that's part of achieving balance, is to look at both the tax side and the spending side. We also think that it's wrong to use our money that we've paid in for Social Security and Medicare to finance other government bills. That's not what it was sent in for. We think it should be held in trust and invested so that when we reach retirement age, we have a secure account to finance our retirement. The people at Heritage tell us that if our money for Social Security had been properly and prudently and conservatively invested over our lifetime, the average monthly Social Security check would be twice the size that it now is.
Twice the size?
Twice the size.
That's incredible.
So for any of your friends on Social Security, ask them next time their deposit comes in, imagine what you could do if that deposit were twice the size that it is. In Medicare, experts tell us that twice the health care expense we're going to need in our lifetime exists after age 65. So that is a stunning statistic because it means that we could save the money over the 40 years of our working life, and if it were invested properly, there would be a sizable account to handle our senior years' health needs. So that's one of the 5 in the Bill of Financial Responsibilities. This one might surprise you. The next one is accounting. You say, well, why put accounting in there? Yes.
Can I guess? Bill Clinton fudging the numbers in the late 90s?
Well, he wasn't the only one.
Okay.
It's been a regular practice. The federal government is one of the only ones in the country that does not practice what's called generally accepted accounting principles. And generally accepted accounting principles are rules for how accounting is to be done, promulgated by experts, people that, CPAs, professors of accounting, and so forth, that are independent of the organization being regulated. The federal government says, no, we don't want anybody outside the federal government telling us anything. So we're going to have all our accounting policy done by employees that we can control. Right. So while states and counties and municipalities, all their independent boards, airports, hospitals, schools, transit systems, all have to observe generally accepted accounting principles formulated by a board independent of them. And that structure exists in the country today. There's a thing called the Financial Accounting Foundation that is in Norwalk, Connecticut, and they exist to operate and staff these boards that promulgate professional practices. We think that should be the case for the federal government as well.
Absolutely.
The truth be told, Matt, nobody knows what the financial condition of our federal government is. Now wrap your head around that for just a minute. No one knows. We cannot agree.
It's a terrifying thought.
It's a terrifying thought. We cannot agree on what the unfunded liabilities of the federal government really are. So how could you make policy when you don't have good data or good information in front of you? So that's the fourth one.
No family can balance a budget.
Exactly.
It doesn't even know its revenue or expenditures.
Exactly right. And its future liabilities. And so that's what the accounting provision, that's the Fourth Amendment. The last one has to do with regulations. Why regulations in a series of financial amendments? Well, regulations are expensive. Steve Forbes tells us that they cost us $2 trillion a year. There's 170,000 pages of federal regulations now. And
wow.
If you're a small business, if the Matt Fisher Communications Studio, Inc. Were subject to the federal regulations and you said, this just isn't fair, I want to protest this, where do I go? Well, we have administrative courts. Oh, really? Well, I'd like to appear before the administrative court. And you fly to Washington and you discover that the administrative courts are inside the departments that wrote and administer the regulation in the first place. The same people you were arguing with when you claimed you were being treated unfairly are the people that sit on the administrative court.
Wow.
And they say, Mr. Fisher, thanks very much for coming in today. We rule against you. Have a nice trip home.
Wow.
And so that's the status. We think the administrative courts ought to be in the judicial system with a judge. And you get a fair hearing before an independent judge who doesn't have skin in the game and who didn't write the regulations in the first place. So that's the fifth one.
Wow.
And so there's these 5 simple, but not easy, amendments to the Constitution will revolutionize, in a good way, the federal government's handling of $4 trillion. Now, how do we get there? We want the Convention of the States, whenever it occurs, and we think it's imminent, we want them to deal with this package of amendments because we want to solve the problem in its entirety while we're there. Some people say, well, look, we don't know very much about a Convention of the States. We don't have these every day. So let's tiptoe in. Let's just go in there and do one thing, do it well, and go home. And prove to the world that we can run one of these conventions without it becoming a mob scene or without
right.
people taking it over. It's called a runaway convention. Let's not have a runaway convention.
Right, let's not.
And so my point is that it need not be a runaway convention. The issues can be presented in advance. They're all written, ready to go. Delegates can read it in advance, come with their questions, negotiate as political process usually involves, and then come away with an agreed package that will deal with all aspects of this problem and not just one.
So for those of our listeners who want to find out more about the Bill of Financial Responsibilities Project, for those who are watching right now who are like, this is what America needs, how do they get involved?
Well, first, we recommend you look at our website, which is BOFR, that's Bill of Financial Responsibilities, BOFRUSA.com, BOFRUSA.com. That will have contact information in there to get a hold of us. It will present the text of the amendments in their entirety. It will go through some of the points that I just made now and hopefully explain them to the satisfaction of the viewer. And then get in touch with us. We'd love to have your help. It's going to have to be a national effort, a citizens' effort. After all, when we started this journey that's called the United States, it was always meant that the citizens were going to have to stand up and get in there and solve some of these things personally. That our elected representatives, as good as they often are sometimes trapped by their own human condition, that they act in their own self-interest and their organization's interest, which doesn't always coincide with the interests of our people. And so our people sometimes have to stand up and say, no, this is enough. We're going to do some things differently.
And that's what your organization is going to focus on doing.
Yes,
John,
sir.
thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Matt.
And thank you to our listeners for joining us on ALECtv.
Pleasure to be with you.
Be sure to join us for more this week here from our annual meeting in Salt Lake City.